I pulled up to my office and froze. My heart sank into my stomach. The building I had spent 10 years building was on fire. Flames shot out of the windows, black smoke clawed into the night sky. Sirens screamed, firefighters shouted, people in the crowd whispered in horror. "This was no accident," I heard someone say. "It's arson." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. My business wasn't just gone, it had been destroyed on purpose. And deep down I knew, someone I trusted had done this. That night I made a vow. I would find out who burned me, and I would make them regret it. The heat was unbearable, even from across the street. I could feel it searing my face as if the fire itself was mocking me. My employees stood around me in shock. Some were crying, others just staring blankly, as if they couldn't believe the empire we had all built together was turning into ashes before our eyes. "Michael, what do we do?" It was Sarah, my assistant. Her voice trembled, her hands clutched a folder she must have grabbed on the way out. Her face was pale, streaked with tears. I opened my mouth but no words came out. What could I say? That everything would be fine? That we'd rebuild? No. This wasn't just an accident. This was an attack. And until I found out who was behind it, nothing would be fine. I turned to the officer in charge. "Do you know what caused it?" He avoided my eyes. "We're still investigating. But," he lowered his voice, "there are signs of accelerants. Someone set this fire." A rush of anger surged through me. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. Hours later, when the flames finally died, I walked through the ruins. The smell of smoke clung to everything, heavy and choking. My office, my conference room, the shelves filled with awards, gone. All that was left was blackened steel and piles of ash. I stopped where my desk had been. The glass window behind it had shattered, and on the wall, burned but still visible, was a message. A single word, spray-painted in red before the fire consumed the place. Payback. My blood ran cold. This wasn't random. This wasn't business competition. This was personal. Back at home I sat in the dark. The fire's reflection still burned in my mind. My phone buzzed endlessly, clients demanding answers, journalists fishing for stories, friends offering condolences. I ignored them all. Instead, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and opened my notebook. On the first page I wrote one question in big, bold letters. Who did this? Names started flooding my mind. Business rivals I had crushed in the past. Former employees I had fired. Partners who had reasons to hate me. But then my thoughts turned darker. What if it wasn't an outsider? What if it was someone inside my circle? Someone close? My stomach twisted. Betrayal always cuts deeper when it comes from those you trust. I underlined the question 3 times. Then, beneath it, I wrote another sentence, one that would guide me from that moment on. I will find you, and I will destroy you. The next morning I put on a suit. My business was gone, but I refused to look weak. The world was already circling like vultures, waiting to see if I'd fall apart. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I went to meet with Detective Harris, the officer assigned to the case. He was an older man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Carter," he said, shaking my hand. "Rough night. You have no idea." He sat across from me in the station. "Listen, I won't sugarcoat this. We found clear evidence of arson. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Multiple ignition points, accelerants placed strategically. This wasn't sloppy, it was planned." "Planned by who?" I demanded. He leaned back. "That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Do you have enemies?" I almost laughed. "Detective, I run a multi-million-dollar business. I have plenty of enemies." Harris smirked. "Good. Then we have somewhere to start." But I wasn't planning to wait for the police. No. This was personal. The law might eventually find the arsonist. But by then I'd already know. And when I did, justice wouldn't come in the form of a courtroom. It would come from me. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes I saw the flames. Every time I drifted off I heard that word again echoing in my head. Payback. By morning, exhaustion gnawed at me but adrenaline kept me moving. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a blank page. At the top I wrote one word, suspects. I forced myself to think logically. Who stood to gain from this? 1. Richard Hale, a former business partner. 5 years ago, I cut him out of a major deal after he tried to skim profits. He swore he'd ruin me one day. 2. Angela Cross, a competitor who had been losing contracts to me for years. She was ruthless, and burning down my headquarters would set me back hard. 3. David Lang, my CFO. Loyal for years but lately distant. He had access to everything, finances, schedules, even the building's security codes. 4. Unknown insider, someone close, maybe even a long-time employee. Arson like this required knowledge of when the building would be empty, how to bypass alarms. I circled David's name. It was the thought I didn't want to face but couldn't ignore. At 9 a.m., I drove to what was left of my office. The fire had been extinguished, but the stench of smoke still hung heavy in the air. Charred beams stuck out like broken bones. Employees lingered outside, talking in hushed voices. Sarah spotted me. She rushed over, eyes red. "Michael, what happens now? Are we out of jobs?" Her question cut deep. These people had built this company with me and now they were terrified. I wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but the truth was I didn't know. "Not yet," I said firmly. "We're not finished. Someone wants to see us fall. I won't give them that." A man in a suit stepped forward from the crowd. Richard Hale. Of all people, he had the nerve to show up here. Well, he said with a smug grin. "Quite the disaster, Michael. Almost poetic, isn't it? You burned me years ago and now look who's burning." I glared at him. "Get the hell out of here, Richard." He shrugged. "Hey, don't shoot the messenger. Just came to say, karma's a bitch." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "If I find out you had anything to do with this." "You'll what?" he sneered. "Your empire is ash. Maybe it's time you learned you're not untouchable." Security moved in, escorting him away, but his words stuck with me. Was he just gloating, or confessing? Later that day, I met Detective Harris again. He had a folder in his hand. "We pulled security footage," he said. "Cameras around the block caught a black SUV circling the area before the fire started. Windows tinted. Plates stolen. Did you get a look at the driver?" Harris shook his head. "Too dark. But whoever it was knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't amateur hour." I leaned back, frustration boiling. "Then I'll have to do your job for you." "Careful, Carter," Harris warned. "If you start playing detective, you might end up stepping on the wrong toes. Or worse, you'll spook the person who did this." I smirked bitterly. Good. Let them be scared. That evening I called David Lang, my CFO. "David, we need to talk. Tonight." We met at a quiet bar downtown. He looked nervous the second he walked in. Sweat on his forehead, darting eyes. My suspicion grew heavier. "Rough couple of days," he muttered, sliding into the booth. "Couple of days?" I snapped. "My life's work is gone. And I need to know, where the hell were you last night?" He froze. "Are you accusing me?" "I'm asking a question." He swallowed hard. "I was home. With my wife." I leaned closer. "You've had access to every code, every lock, every schedule. If anyone could get in unnoticed, it's you. So tell me, why shouldn't I believe it was you?" His face reddened with anger. "Because I've been loyal to you for 10 damn years. Don't you dare put this on me, Michael." "I lost everything too." I studied him. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe he wasn't. But the way his hands shook, something didn't add up. Before he stormed out, he hissed, "If you're looking for traitors, start with the people you don't question." The words lingered long after he was gone. That night, alone again, I replayed everything in my mind. Richard's smug grin. David's trembling hands. The red letters painted on my wall. Payback. This wasn't just business. This was war. And I was ready to fight. The next morning, I drove through the city in silence, the radio off, my thoughts loud. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what I had lost. Billboards I had once bought for advertising, buildings where I had signed contracts, restaurants where I had celebrated victories. All of it seemed hollow now. When I pulled up at the ruins of my office, the police tape was still there, fluttering in the wind like a mocking flag. Reporters were already gathered, shouting questions as I got out of the car. "Mr. Carter, who do you think did this? Are you declaring bankruptcy? Did you have enemies in organized crime?" I ignored them all, pushing past. But one question pierced through the noise. "Do you think it was an inside job?" I stopped for just a second. My silence was enough to feed the headlines. Cameras flashed. But deep down, that was exactly what I feared. Inside the wreckage, I found Harris again. He was walking through with his notepad, jotting things down. "Morning, Carter," he said without looking up. "You shouldn't be here. This is still an active investigation." "It was my company," I shot back. "I have every right to be here." He sighed. "Fair enough. But don't touch anything." I stepped over collapsed beams, broken glass crunching under my shoes. My office had once been on the top floor. Now it was nothing but open sky. Then I saw something that made my pulse spike. Buried in the ash near the entrance was a metal keycard, one of ours. I picked it up carefully. The edges were blackened, but the name was still visible. David Lang. My CFO. I clenched my jaw. He claimed he'd been home all night. So how the hell did his keycard end up here? I slipped it into my pocket without saying a word to Harris. If David was involved, I needed to know for sure. That evening, I drove to David's house. His mansion sat on the edge of town, a monument to wealth I had helped him earn. The lights were on. Through the window, I saw him laughing with his wife at the dinner table, like nothing had happened. Rage boiled inside me. How could he sit there, smiling while my life was in ashes? I gripped the steering wheel, fighting the urge to storm inside. Not yet. If I confronted him without proof, he'd just deny it again. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. I need you to do something for me, I said. Anything, Michael. Check the security logs from last night. I want to know whose keycards were used in the building before the fire. There was a pause. But the system should have burned up. Not the off-site backups. Remember, I had them installed last year? Pull them. She hesitated, then nodded. I'll call you when I have something. I hung up, staring at David's house one last time before driving away. At 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. Sarah's voice was shaky. Michael. I found something. What is it? There were 3 keycard entries after hours last night. 2 of them were maintenance staff. But the third, she stopped like she couldn't bring herself to say it. Sarah. Who? She swallowed audibly. David Lang. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. He had lied to my face. Michael, if he did this, what are you going to do? I stared into the darkness of my empty apartment. What I have to. The next day I arranged a meeting. I called David, told him we needed to discuss finances and recovery plans. I made it sound urgent, desperate. He agreed without hesitation. We met in a private conference room at a hotel downtown. He walked in looking tired but collected, like he had already rehearsed whatever speech he was going to give. Michael, he began, I know things look bad but we can salvage. I cut him off by tossing his burned keycard onto the table. His words died in his throat. His eyes widened for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Funny, I said coldly. You told me you were home all night. So explain to me why your keycard was found in the ashes of my building. He stared at the card like it was a snake. Then he forced a laugh. That doesn't prove anything. Someone could have stolen it. Don't lie to me, I snapped. My voice echoed in the room. The security logs show you entering the building the night of the fire. Do you have any idea what that means? Sweat formed on his forehead. His composure was cracking. Michael, listen, it's not what you think. Then tell me what the hell it is. He leaned in, whispering now. I didn't set the fire. But I know who did. My blood ran cold. Who? He glanced around nervously like the walls themselves had ears. Then he lowered his voice even further. It wasn't me. It was someone higher up. Someone who wanted to send you a message. And if you push too hard, you won't just lose your business. You'll lose your life. I froze. Higher up. What the hell was he talking about? Before I could press him further, he stood abruptly. I've said too much already. Don't call me again. And with that, he walked out, leaving me alone with more questions than answers. That night, I sat in the dark again, staring at his abandoned keycard. My gut screamed that David was lying, or at least hiding something. But one thing was certain now, this wasn't just betrayal. This was bigger. Someone powerful had pulled the strings. And if they thought burning my empire would break me, they were dead wrong. It was only the beginning. After David walked out of that room, I sat there for what felt like hours. My glass of water had gone warm, untouched. My mind spun in circles. Someone higher up. The words echoed like a curse. What did that mean? Was David just trying to shift blame? Or was there truly someone powerful enough to orchestrate this whole thing? I needed answers. And David wasn't going to give them to me willingly. The next morning, I called Sarah again. Pull everything we have on David. Bank accounts, investments, transactions. I don't care if you have to hack into his grandmother's Facebook. Find me something. Her voice was hesitant. Michael, are you sure this is safe? If someone really dangerous is behind this. Safe. I barked. Sarah, our lives went up in flames last week. Nothing about this is safe anymore. She went quiet for a moment, then said, I'll see what I can find. That evening, I went to a local cafe, one of the few places I still felt anonymous. I sat in the corner, sipping coffee, watching people move around like the world hadn't just collapsed. That's when my phone buzzed. Sarah again. I sent you a file. Check your email. I opened it. Bank statements. At first glance, everything looked normal. Salaries, investments, bonuses. But then I saw it. A wire transfer. Large. Unusual. Sent just 3 days before the fire. $500,000. Destination, an offshore account. Sender, David Lang. But that wasn't the part that made my blood run cold. The receiver's name was blurred through layers of shell companies. But one entity kept reappearing across the trail. Cross Industries. Angela Cross. My biggest rival. I sat back stunned. David had been moving money to her company. My CFO, the man I trusted with everything, had been feeding my competitor. Sarah, I whispered into the phone, this isn't just betrayal. This is a damn conspiracy. What are you going to do? She asked nervously. I stared at the screen, my jaw set. Find out how deep it goes. That night, I drove past Cross Industries headquarters. A glass tower gleamed under the city lights, pristine, untouched. While my empire lay in ashes, hers stood taller than ever. I parked across the street watching. Employees came and went, laughing, carrying laptops, chatting on their phones. A life uninterrupted. Then I saw her. Angela Cross herself, stepping out of a sleek black car. Perfectly dressed, confident, untouchable. She smiled as she walked inside. And for a second I swore she looked straight at me. Back home I poured another whiskey. My apartment felt smaller every night, the walls closing in. I spread the files Sarah had sent across my table. $500,000. That was more than just a bribe. That was a partnership. David hadn't just betrayed me. He had joined forces with Angela. I slammed my fist onto the table. The glass rattled, whiskey spilled. Rage burned hotter than the fire that destroyed my office. But beneath the anger, something else grew, resolve. They thought they could ruin me and walk away clean? No. If Angela and David had aligned against me, I'd tear them both apart. 2 days later, I decided to confront David one last time. Not at a bar, not at a hotel. At his own home. I parked a block away and walked through the shadows until I reached his mansion. Lights glowed inside, voices drifted through the open window. I crept closer, staying low. Through the glass, I saw David pacing, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was sharp, urgent. No, I'm telling you, he suspects me. He's not going to let this go. If Carter keeps digging, we'll all... I strained to hear the rest, but then headlights flashed behind me. A black SUV slowed as it passed, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlight. My heart pounded. The same type of SUV Harris had mentioned. I ducked behind a hedge, holding my breath. The SUV stopped for a moment, then drove on. But I knew, it wasn't random. Someone was watching me. When I turned back to the window, David was gone. Curtains drawn. Conversation over. I hurried back to my car, adrenaline coursing through me. My instincts screamed, I was in danger. By the time I got home, the feeling hadn't left. Every creak in the hallway, every shadow outside my window felt like eyes. Then, thud. A sound at my door. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a heavy glass bottle, and crept forward. My pulse hammered in my ears. Slowly I opened the door. Nothing. Just the empty hallway. But when I looked down, I saw it. An envelope. I picked it up, hands shaking, and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No name, no signature. Just a message typed in bold letters. Stop digging or you'll be next. I stood there, frozen, the paper trembling in my hand. The fire hadn't been enough. Now they were coming for me directly. But instead of fear, something else burned in my chest. Defiance. I looked at the note one last time, then crumpled it into my fist. They want me scared, I whispered. They want me silent. But they have no idea who they're dealing with. I tossed the paper into the fireplace and watched it burn. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. The threat note burned in the fireplace until it was nothing but gray ash. I stood there, watching the smoke curl into the air, and made myself a promise. You tried to scare me. You should have killed me instead. The next morning, I went back to see Harris at the station. I didn't mention the note. I knew how it would sound. To him, I'd look paranoid, maybe even desperate. Instead, I asked, any new leads? He rubbed his temples. Not much. But we did find something strange. The fire alarm system at your office, it didn't fail. It was disabled. Someone on the inside helped set this up. My chest tightened. I already knew. David. But Harris wasn't finished. And there's more. One of your employees, maintenance staff, disappeared right after the fire. No calls, no texts, no sightings. Just gone. Who? I demanded. He flipped through his notes. Name's Kyle Miller. Worked nights, low profile, never caused trouble. But get this, he was seen 2 weeks ago meeting with someone from Cross Industries. Angela again. Her name was everywhere. When I left the station, I sat in my car, staring at the wheel. Pieces were starting to come together. Angela Cross. David Lang. A vanished employee. And me right in the middle. They weren't just trying to ruin me. They were building something bigger. And the fire? That was just their opening move. That evening, Sarah called again. Her voice was urgent. Michael, I think you should come to my place. There's something you need to see. I drove across town, the paranoia eating at me with every mile. When I arrived, she pulled me inside quickly, locking the door behind us. On her laptop was a series of files. Emails. Transfers. Schedules. Where did you get this? I asked. I've been digging deeper into David's accounts. He's been moving money to multiple shell companies, not just Cross Industries. And look, she pointed to a highlighted line. It was a payment. Large. Recent. Labeled simply, job complete. My stomach dropped. The fire. She nodded grimly. He was paid to make it happen. I gritted my teeth. Every doubt I'd had about David vanished. He wasn't just hiding something. He was part of it. But before we could dig further, headlights flashed outside Sarah's apartment. I froze. A black SUV. Turn off the lights, I whispered. We crouched by the window, peering through the blinds. The SUV idled for a moment, then slowly rolled down the street. They're watching us, Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. Not us, I corrected. My fists clenched. Me. When I left her place that night, my chest was tight, every nerve on fire. I knew I was being followed. The SUV trailed me for blocks, keeping its distance, never too close, never too far. Finally, I pulled into an underground parking garage and killed my engine. Silence. My heart thudded in my ears. The SUV rolled in behind me, tires crunching on the concrete. Its headlights cut through the shadows, blinding me. I stepped out of my car slowly, hands empty, eyes locked on the vehicle. Come on, I muttered. Show yourself. The SUV stopped. The engine idled. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's window rolled down just an inch. Enough for a voice to slip through the echoing garage. Walk away, Carter. Or the next fire won't be your office. It'll be you. And before I could respond, the SUV sped off into the night, tires screeching, leaving me alone in the silence of the concrete tomb. I stood there, breathing hard, fists trembling. They wanted me scared. They wanted me broken. But all they had done was light another fire, this one inside me. I wasn't walking away. I wasn't backing down. If they thought burning my empire would end me, they had no idea what I was about to become. The next morning, I woke up with one thought burning in my mind. They think I'm weak. They think I'll fold. I looked around my apartment. Empty whiskey bottles, burnt note in the fireplace, scattered papers on the table. My life had been reduced to ashes just like my company. But not for long. If David and Angela thought I'd just take the hit, they had no idea what kind of man I could be when cornered. I called Sarah. Meet me at the old storage unit. Bring everything. 2 hours later, we sat inside the dim, dusty space I hadn't used in years. It smelled of oil and old wood, but it was safe. Off the grid. No one knew I was here. I spread the files across a makeshift table. Bank records. Emails. Photos. Threads that connected David and Angela, but nothing concrete enough to take to the police or the press. Sarah leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So what's the plan, Michael? You want to keep digging? Fine. But this is bigger than just David and Angela. Whoever left that note, they're serious. We're playing with fire. I looked at her. Then we fight fire with fire. The first step was to hit David where it hurt. His secrets. Sarah had managed to track one of his offshore accounts to a private bank in the Cayman Islands. Untouchable for most people. But I still had friends. One of them, a former client named Victor, owed me favors. Dangerous favors. That evening I called him. Michael Carter, his deep voice answered. Haven't heard that name in a while. I need access, I said. Cayman account. Belongs to David Lang. He chuckled. You don't ask for small things, do you? What's in it for me? Clear one of your debts. Remember the time I got your brother out of jail? You owe me. Silence. Then a low sigh. Send me the details. You'll have something by tomorrow? For the first time since the fire, I felt the scales shift. Just slightly. The next day Victor came through. A file appeared in my inbox. I opened it and my jaw clenched. David's account wasn't just receiving payments. It was sending them too. Bribes, hush money, transactions to politicians, regulators, even cops. The man had built a web of corruption under my nose. Jesus, Sarah whispered, scanning the files. This isn't just theft. This is organized. I nodded slowly. And if we leak this, David goes down. That night, I went to a quiet bar on the edge of town. The kind of place where no one asked questions. I ordered a drink, sat in the back and waited. At 9 p.m. David walked in. Nervous, twitchy. He didn't see me at first. He took a booth, ordered something strong and kept checking his phone. I slid into the seat across from him. His eyes went wide. Michael, what the hell are you doing here? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. We need to talk. He swallowed hard. About what? I slid a folder across the table. His folder. Offshore accounts. Payments. Names. His face went pale. He flipped through the pages, then looked up at me, sweating. Where did you get this? Doesn't matter. What matters is you've been selling me out. To Angela. To politicians. To whoever the hell is pulling your strings. And you're going to tell me everything. David's hand shook as he reached for his glass. He took a gulp, then muttered, You don't understand, Michael. This is bigger than me. Bigger than Angela. You think she's running the show? She's not. I narrowed my eyes. Then who is? Before he could answer, a loud crash shattered the moment. The bar door burst open. 2 men in dark coats stormed in, guns drawn. Get down, someone shouted. But they weren't after the crowd. Their eyes were locked on us. I dove behind the table as bullets ripped through wood and glass. David screamed, ducking low, clutching the folder. Bottles shattered behind the bar, people scrambled for the exit, chaos erupted. I grabbed David by the collar and yanked him toward the back door. Move. We crashed through the kitchen, pots clanging, cooks shouting, then out into the alley. The night air hit my face like ice. Behind us, footsteps thundered closer. We ran. David wheezed, his breath ragged. They're going to kill us. No, I growled, pulling him forward. They're going to kill you. I'm just collateral. At the end of the alley, a car screeched to a halt. The same black SUV. Doors opened. More men stepped out. We were surrounded. I looked at David. His face was soaked in sweat, panic in his eyes. Last chance, I said, grabbing his collar again. Who's really behind this? He stammered, lips trembling. It's not Angela. She's just the front. The real power is... Bang. A single shot rang out. David's body jerked, then went limp in my arms. Blood spread across his shirt. I looked up, stunned. One of the men from the SUV lowered his silenced pistol. Message delivered, he said coldly. Then, before I could react, they all piled back into the SUV and sped off into the night, leaving me kneeling in the alley, holding David's lifeless body. For a moment, the world was silent. My rival. My betrayer. My only source of truth, gone in an instant. And his last words still echoed in my head. The real power is... He never finished. I set his body down, my hands shaking, rage boiling inside me. Whoever the real power was, they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Because they hadn't killed me. Not yet. The alley reeked of gunpowder and blood. My hands trembled as I wiped David's blood from my shirt. The man I once called my right hand, my friend, he was gone. Silence before he could reveal the truth. But his last words haunted me. The real power is... Who was powerful enough to use Angela as a puppet, to burn my company, to buy out cops and politicians, to erase people from existence. Whoever it was, they had just taken everything from me. And now they had crossed a line. By the time police arrived, the alley was empty. No SUV, no shooters, just me and David's corpse. Detective Harris stared at me with suspicion as his team taped off the scene. You just happened to be with him when he got shot? He asked flatly. I clenched my fist. I didn't pull the trigger. Then who did? Your guess is as good as mine, I snapped. But I know one thing. David was dirty. And he was working with Angela Cross. You want names? Check his Cayman accounts. Harris raised a brow. Funny. You suddenly have all the answers. Maybe too many. I leaned close, lowering my voice. Detective, you want the truth? Start looking higher. This isn't about some office fire. This is a war. And if you don't act fast, you'll find yourself on the wrong side of it. He stared at me for a long moment, then muttered, Go home, Carter. Before I decide you're more trouble than you're worth. But I didn't go home. Instead, I drove back to the storage unit, heart pounding, brain on fire. Sarah was already there, waiting. The moment she saw me, she froze. "Michael, you're covered in blood. David's dead." Her face went pale. "Oh my God. What happened?" "They silenced him. Right in front of me. He was about to tell me who's really behind all this, and then I mimed the gunshot. Gone." Sarah sank into a chair, clutching her head. "This is spiraling out of control." "No," I said, pacing. "This is the first time I see clearly. David's dead, which means we can't rely on him. But we still have his files. And if we can prove Angela's ties, we can smoke out whoever she's working for." That night, Sarah and I dug deeper into the files. Hours blurred together as we pieced together transaction trails, shell companies, fake charities, offshore accounts. At 3 a.m. we found it. One shell company kept appearing again and again, Orion Enterprises. Payments to Angela. Payments from David. Even payments linked to city officials. And the registered owner? Hidden behind layers of proxies and offshore filings. But one name finally slipped through. Thomas Whitaker. The billionaire real estate tycoon. The man everyone in the city admired, the man who sat on charity boards, funded hospitals, appeared on magazine covers with his smug, fatherly smile. Whitaker. The real power. I leaned back, the name burning into my mind. Of course. It was him all along. Sarah frowned. "Michael, if Whitaker's involved, this is suicide. He owns judges. He owns cops. He owns the media. Going against him isn't just dangerous, it's impossible." I smirked bitterly. Good thing I don't believe in impossible. The next day I made my move. Angela was hosting a charity gala downtown, the kind of event where the city's elite paraded in designer suits and million-dollar smiles. And where Whitaker himself was rumored to appear. I walked through the grand doors in a borrowed tuxedo, keeping my head low, my eyes sharp. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above me, waiters floated past with champagne, cameras flashed as Angela greeted politicians and CEOs. She was stunning in her silver dress, laughing, playing the perfect hostess. But all I saw was the woman who had destroyed me. I moved closer, weaving through the crowd until I was only a few feet away. I could hear her voice, smooth and honeyed, dripping with lies. Then I stepped forward. "Enjoying the party?" I asked. Her smile froze the second she saw me. For a brief moment her mask slipped. Then she recovered, tilting her head with mock surprise. "Michael Carter. How bold of you to show your face here." "Bold?" I leaned in, keeping my voice low. "No. Bold as burning my business to the ground and thinking I'd let you walk away." Her eyes narrowed. "Careful. You don't want to make a scene." "Oh, I do," I said, flashing her a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "But not here. Not yet. I just wanted you to know. I'm coming for you." She studied me, her lips curving into a faint smirk. "Then you'd better move fast. Because Whitaker doesn't like loose ends." The name hit me like ice water. She said it openly. Confirmed it. Whitaker. Before I could press further, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. "Security." 2 men in black suits. "Time to go," one growled. I let them drag me out, not resisting. Not yet. Because I had what I came for. Confirmation. Angela and Whitaker. Partners in crime. Later that night, I sat in my car overlooking the city skyline, lights glittering in the distance. I thought about David's corpse in the alley. About Angela's smirk. About Whitaker, the man who pulled all the strings. I whispered to myself, "You think you own this city. But you've never met someone like me." The first strike would come soon. But it wouldn't be loud. Not yet. It would be quiet. Surgical. A crack in their perfect empire. And when they least expected it, I'd burn them. The morning after the gala, I woke to the sound of rain against the windows. The storm outside felt like a reflection of my mind, restless, relentless. Whitaker. Angela. The names played in my head like a drumbeat. For the first time since the fire, I wasn't lost. I had a target. And when a man like me has a target, it's only a matter of time before he pulls the trigger. Sarah brewed coffee as I laid the files across the kitchen table. "If we want to hurt Whitaker," I said, pointing at the folders, "we don't go straight for him. He's untouchable. But his empire, his money, his men, his reputation, that's where we strike first." She sipped her mug, eyes scanning the documents. "You're talking about dismantling him piece by piece." "Exactly. I don't need to kill Whitaker to destroy him. I just need to cut off everything he feeds on." She raised a brow. "And how do you plan to do that? He owns half the city." I allowed myself a thin smile. Then we take the other half. The first move was small, almost invisible. I leaked David's offshore accounts to a financial journalist I trusted. Within days, headlines exploded. Prominent CFO tied to illegal shell companies. The story spread like wildfire. David was already dead, but his name became poison. Every company connected to him was questioned. Every deal he touched fell under investigation. And in those documents, carefully placed, were whispers of Angela Cross. She wasn't directly exposed, but her name appeared just enough to make people nervous. Nervous allies meant cracks in her armor. Angela struck back quickly. 3 nights later, I found my car's brakes cut. If Sarah hadn't spotted the leaking fluid before I drove off, I'd be another obituary. The message was clear. They knew I was moving against them. Good. Fear was no longer a weapon they held over me. It was fuel. Weeks passed in shadows. My attacks were calculated, each one sharper than the last. A city contractor tied to Whitaker lost his license after a whistleblower video, mysteriously, surfaced online. A mid-level politician who owed Whitaker favors was caught in a scandal I carefully orchestrated. One by one, I peeled away his layers of protection, leaving him more exposed than he'd ever been. But the deeper I went, the more dangerous it became. One evening, Sarah rushed into the safe house, breathless. "Michael, you need to see this." She dropped a newspaper on the table. The headline screamed, "Businessman Michael Carter wanted for questioning in CFO's death." My face stared back at me, grainy and cold. I clenched my jaw. They're framing me. Sarah's eyes brimmed with fear. "Whitaker's moving faster. If he paints you as a murderer, you'll lose any chance of fighting back." I leaned over the paper, my reflection staring back from the glossy ink. Murderer. Fugitive. Criminal. If that's the story Whitaker wanted to write, then I'd give him an ending he'd never expect. That night I called Angela. Her voice slid through the receiver like silk. Well, Michael Carter. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "You think you've won?" I said quietly. "You haven't. Whitaker's not invincible. And you're not as safe as you think." Pause. Then a soft laugh. "Is that a threat?" "No. It's a promise." I hung up before she could reply, staring at the dark window. My reflection looked like a stranger, harder, colder, more dangerous. I wasn't the man who built an empire from nothing anymore. I was the man who would burn another one to the ground. Whitaker's empire was like a fortress, stone walls of wealth, steel gates of political power, an army of men bought and paid for. But I'd spent weeks digging tunnels under those walls. And now it was time to collapse the foundation. The first real blow landed on a rainy Monday. I slipped a hard drive into a reporter's hand, encrypted files connecting Orion Enterprises to money laundering for a private security firm. A firm Whitaker used to guard his properties. The story spread like a virus. Overnight, Whitaker's company lost millions in stock value. Shareholders panicked. Investors fled. But more importantly, his security detail fractured. Men who once swore loyalty to him suddenly questioned if their paychecks were worth the FBI breathing down their necks. Angela called me 2 nights later. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said. Her voice was calm, but beneath it I heard the crack. The first sign of fear. "Dangerous." I chuckled. "Angela, this isn't a game. This is war. And you're on the losing side. You really think you can break him?" Whitaker survived worse. Not against someone like me. He underestimated me once. He won't live to do it twice. There was silence. Then she whispered, "You don't understand, Michael. He'll kill me too." And just like that, I heard it, the tremor in her voice. The certainty that the man she trusted would discard her the second she became a liability. "Help me take him down," I said, my voice low, steady. "You know his secrets. You know where he hides his skeletons. Give them to me and I'll make sure he never touches you again." She didn't answer. The line went dead. But I knew. The seed of doubt was planted. It happened faster than I expected. 1 week later, I received an anonymous message. "Midnight. Whitaker Tower. Top floor. Come alone." I knew it was Angela. And I knew it was a trap. But traps go both ways. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. The top floor of Whitaker Tower was a palace in the sky. Glass walls overlooked the sleeping city. A long oak table stretched across the room, papers and glasses of scotch neatly arranged. At the far end sat Whitaker himself. Silver hair slicked back, tailored suit flawless, eyes cold as marble. Angela stood beside him, her face unreadable. "Michael Carter," Whitaker said smoothly as if greeting an old friend. The man who refuses to die. I stepped forward, hands in my pockets. You burned my life to the ground. I'm just here to return the favor. He chuckled, low and patronizing. You think you've hurt me? You've been swatting at shadows. My empire doesn't fall because of one bitter man with a vendetta. I smiled faintly. Funny. Because while you sit here drinking your scotch, the FBI is raiding 3 of your warehouses. By morning, every paper in the city will have your name in bold. Money laundering. Bribery. Arms deals. You'll be lucky if you die a free man. His jaw tightened. For the first time the mask cracked. Then his eyes flicked to Angela. Did you give this to him? Her lips parted but no sound came out. Answer me, he barked. Angela's eyes darted between us. Between power and survival, between fear and freedom. Finally she whispered, yes. Whitaker's face twisted with rage. He reached for the gun beneath the table, but I was faster. The shot rang out, deafening in the glass tower. Whitaker slumped back in his chair, eyes wide with shock, crimson spreading across his chest. The great man, the untouchable king of the city, was nothing more than another corpse. Silence fell. Angela stared at him, trembling. It's over. I lowered the gun. My voice was cold. No. This is just the end of him. The war never ends. She looked at me, eyes wet with fear, or maybe admiration. What will you do now? I turned toward the window, the city lights blazing below. I'll rebuild. From the ashes. Weeks later, the ruins of my old business were nothing but a cleared lot. No smoke. No charred beams. Just empty ground, waiting. I stood there alone, hands in my pockets, the wind cutting sharp across the street. Whitaker was gone. Angela disappeared, leaving nothing but whispers. The city called me many things: killer, vigilante, survivor. Maybe all of them were true. I closed my eyes and inhaled. For the first time in months I didn't smell smoke. Revenge hadn't brought peace. But it had brought balance. And in this city, sometimes that's the best you can hope for. I opened my eyes, staring at the skyline. This isn't the end, I murmured to the night. It's the beginning. And I walked away.